Chapter 4. In the Ashes of Two Cities. The sun rose over Nagasaki on August 10, 1945, but there was no morning. The city lay cloaked in thick, choking smoke. The familiar hills surrounding the harbor were blackened, scorched like charcoal. Brick buildings had folded like paper. Wooden homes were simply gone. Ash floated in the wind like snow, drifting into alleyways and across the bombed-out remnants of schools, churches, and bathhouses. The second mushroom cloud still haunted the sky's memory. Tsutomu Yamaguchi stood at the threshold of his home, weak and shivering. His wounds had reopened. The left side of his body was oozing from the burns, and a sickness, deeper than the injuries, stranger than infection, now gripped his bones. His skin burned even in the shade. His mouth was dry no matter how much he drank. At night, his teeth chattered violently against one another. Vomiting came in waves. Clumps of hair gathered on his pillow. Open quote, "It felt like something inside me was unraveling," he later said. Close quote. He didn't know the word for it yet, but what he was experiencing was acute radiation poisoning, a phenomenon not yet understood in 1945. The United States had dropped the world's first nuclear bombs, but even American scientists didn't fully comprehend the invisible, lethal residue left behind. Yamaguchi did not need a scientific explanation. His body was telling him everything. A country in collapse. As Tsutomu lay in bed, suspended between pain and fever dreams, the entire nation of Japan began to buckle. Within days of Nagasaki's destruction, Emperor Hirohito addressed the nation, the first time the people had ever heard his voice. Open quote, "The enemy has begun to employ a new and most cruel bomb," the emperor said in his broadcast on August 15, 1945, "the power of which to do damage is indeed incalculable." Close quote. With those words, Japan surrendered. World War II, the deadliest conflict in human history, was over. For most Japanese citizens, the war had ended in a blur of grief and dust. The surrender brought no relief, only silence. Families searched for loved ones who had vanished without trace. Hospitals overflowed with the maimed and dying. Schools became morgues. Children wandered the streets looking for food or parents who would never return. And in two cities, the survivors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the Hibakusha, began their slow, agonizing march into history. Tsutomu Yamaguchi was one of the first among them, but his journey would be unlike any other. The long recovery. For weeks he lay bedridden. His wounds became infected. He was too weak to eat. On some days his vision faded in and out. He was sure he would die, if not from his injuries, then from whatever poison had crept into his blood in Hiroshima. Hisako cared for him while also tending to their infant son and surviving on what little food they could scavenge. The city was barely functioning. No running water, no electricity, no medicine. Then, slowly, his body began to stabilize. The fever broke. The vomiting stopped. The pain, though still sharp, became bearable. His hair stopped falling out. The open burns began to scab over. By September, he was able to sit up. By October, he could walk. And through it all, a single, unbearable question haunted him. Open quote, "Why me?" Close quote, why had he survived when thousands, friends, co-workers, strangers had died instantly? Why had he been present for both atomic bombings, a feat so improbable it bordered on cosmic cruelty? Was he being punished or chosen? Survivor's guilt. Survivor's guilt is a term we use today, a psychological wound carried by those who live when others don't. But in 1945, there were no words for what Yamaguchi felt. He would later describe the memory of Hiroshima as a dream he couldn't wake from. The fire, the bodies, the skinless figures reaching out in silence. Then, just as the nightmare faded, it had repeated itself in Nagasaki. It felt impossible, insane. He tried not to talk about it, not with friends, not with family, not even with his wife. He feared people wouldn't believe him. He feared they would resent him, and in a way, they did. After the war, hibakusha were stigmatized in Japanese society. Employers feared their health problems would affect productivity. Neighbors whispered about contamination. Marriage prospects for young survivors were considered grim. Even doctors, unsure of how to treat radiation exposure, often avoided the topic entirely. Yamaguchi, despite being twice bombed, told almost no one for years. He went back to work. He raised his children. He lived a quiet life. But the scars, physical and emotional, never truly faded. Open quote, "I was lucky," he once said, but it did not feel like luck. Close quote. The other survivors. Years later, Japanese researchers would confirm that over 160 people were known to have been present in both Hiroshima and Nagasaki during the bombings. Traveling survivors, factory workers, family members, and messengers caught between two fates. But only one would be officially recognized by the Japanese government. Only one would speak before the United Nations about the horror he saw. Only one would live to tell the world, from the inside, what it truly means to survive the end of a city, twice. His name was Tsutomu Yamaguchi.